Oh, okay. Yeah. I will.
I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order with the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation. Liberty and justice.
The first on our agenda is the EMA director. We have
So this is an update to our ADA.
So this is the update that I'll bring this back to you currently and keep us compliant with your transition plan. Walks through every government building, which is basically. The short.
So this meets all of the requirements that we got laid out in front of us under the previous EMA from the state to be compliant under ADA.
Yes. We'll show you that for each individual. Then this one is just all your forms and. Legal to all of this. If somebody has a complaint or agreements, how they go through the process and what we are to be able to say file. There wasn't very many changes and things that was created that all within that. So they have where it's said. What they said.
motion to approve the claim.
Like motion to approve the transition and implementation plan as presented.
Second. Aye.
Like,
All in favor?
aye. Don, did you have any questions about the ADA plan?
No, I don't. Thanks.
In here.
Excuse me, is there a sound system in your grab card back here?
It should be. No.
If there is, it's as high as it's gonna get.
Yeah.
We've got the speakers in the back of the room. If they're not, we're not coming through on those.
They're not on.
Okay.
We didn't hear her. We heard you. We couldn't hear her.
No speakers on.
Mike, yeah, you need to move that mic over, Mark, because I heard everybody earlier.
Okay.
That
You're
helps.
loud.
That works. Probably better too loud, not loud enough.
Thank you.
So then we have Sean Kane. Something.
In front of us. Here.
You should have received an email from Edwin regarding the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant. It is a grant program from the U.S. Department of Transportation to fund initiatives to prevent roadway deaths and serious injuries. What CRPC is proposing is to go in as a region with all of our 8 counties and go in and ask for a safety plan study to be done. NDOT has been, excuse me, asking CRPC for several years to create a safety plan for all of our counties. And we haven't done it yet because we didn't have the knowledge to do that. We had a couple of different consultants come to us and say that they would do it for us. One of them was very high in cost. One of them was significantly lower. So what we have done, because we would have to actually procure that consultant, we estimated on the high side of things. We are looking at applying for an $800,000 grant. It could be significantly less than that, but what we have to have is an 80-20, meaning 20% match. So we propose to direct that across all of our counties, our 8-county region. So we are looking at Stark providing $23,750 in match at most, not to exceed that amount. It could be significantly less depending on what consultant actually is awarded. At this point in time, I can tell you that Jasper County signed on this morning. Carroll County signed on this morning. Benton, Newton, Warren, and White have already joined us. So we only have 2 more counties, you included, to come in and say that they're going to be a part of it. We do anticipate the funds most likely being needed in 2024. The grant probably will not be awarded from the U.S. Department of Transportation until the end of 23. So we won't actually be expending the funds until 24.
What would be the timeline on when we would have to provide the matching funds?
In 2024.
Okay.
Mhm. Just to give you an idea, in 2017 to 2021, there was in our 8-county region 169 fatalities. And we're just looking to try to find different avenues to obviously get that number to 0. The study could come back that we need signage, we need changes, simple things like that. We need education. It could also come back that we need to reconstruct roadways. We just don't know what those are going to be, but this will give us an overall view of what we can do within our 8 counties. This can lead to then an implementation grant that each county can individually take on. We could possibly take it on as a region, but we find it's probably going to be more effective if you do it individually. But in order to get those implementation dollars, you're going to have a plan in place. And it's going to be much more cost effective to do it as a region than to do it individually.
So this is more or less pertaining to what you were wanting, Dan, for the plan.
Yes, earlier this year, I came and talked to you guys about this project. By going through CURPC, they're gonna write the grant for us to get the implementation. So I
So
feel this is a good plan for the county. This would be a good way to go about it.
what we're looking for is a letter of support right now from you that says that you're willing to go into it with the other 7 counties in our region. We need that for the grant application. Then we also need a letter stating that you are going to provide the local match that we're requesting. Again, it's not to exceed the $23,750. It could be substantially less. We just don't know until we do that procurement. Also, we are going to ask for you to provide a team member to be on the procurement interview team so that we want everyone to have a say. So obviously we don't want him to be left out. We want him to be a part of it. This is your
I
plan.
guess it will be part of it.
Yeah. Looking at, she made the comment that one's quite a bit higher than the other consultant. The other consultant would be like less than $8,000. So I mean, pretty big difference between that 23,000 and 8,000.
We actually got another consultant that touched base with me this morning and said that they want to be part of the process as well. So we don't know where they'll fall. But again, it's going to be an open procurement process, so we don't know how those numbers will fare.
Don, did you hear all that?
Yeah, Dan probably don't have nothing in his budget out there for that, does he?
Well, we're kind of tight.
I think it's a good thing.
Well, I think it's a good plan to have, yes. It'll open us up for future grants by having this plan in place.
Yeah, I think going this route would give us better options down the road, seeing as we're acting as a body of counties and how the state seems to enjoy doing regional initiatives these days. So I'll make the motion to approve the grant support and grant match letters.
I'll second it.
Favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We appreciate it and we'll be reaching back out once we get to it. The application is due on July 10th, so we'll be submitting that application and then as soon as it's awarded, we'll get in touch with you for the procurement process to start. Thank you.
We have Sherry up.
What do you want to talk about first?
Either way, whichever way.
Okay. As far as the smoke alarms, I checked today. I really would like to go with Menards. Their price has stayed the same, and if we order in bulk, it would be at a discount. And that was going to be for the open house and fire prevention week. That would be a countywide thing. We would like to get the smoke alarms, carbon dioxide detectors, and then packages of batteries to hand that out for county residents. And I had brought that up in May or April. And Don told me I needed to come back in June, to see if other fire departments had come in front of you to ask for some of that money.
So what was the cost on it then?
I don't have the letters that were to you, but this is for the council. It was $697 for the smoke alarms. It was $1988, but if we purchased more in group, it was 25% off. And then $696 for the package of batteries. And we had talked about a price, and I think I came up with it was like 41 or 4,200, and we had said maybe 4,500 if the price was going up in that 2-month span. So I just was coming back to see whether or not you would include that,
I mean,
so I could go in front of council.
have you checked on grants then for smoke alarms?
Not for that, no.
I still kind of think each fire department should go with their own thing on this and really even look in their own budgets. I mean, that's my opinion. Because if that's countywide, you're saying like 45, that'd be less than 1,000 or right over 1,000 for each fire department.
This is something that's typically out of our wheelhouse.
Well, hey, Charlie,
Yeah, Dave.
one of the things too is I'm not sure if anybody's talked to our building inspectors or anything like that, is typically the building code now is to have a hardwired smoke detector, not these battery powered ones that the battery can fail. I don't know how much liability we take on or just in general, like how much we want to, get involved in that level. Same with the carbon dioxide detectors. They have like a 2-year wear out when they, on the sensor. I'm a little nervous about the county sponsoring something like that, where when Don said a lot of times the fire departments and the townships sponsor that within their own fire department.
For personal residents, do they hardwire them? I doubt that.
In new construction and remodels. Yes.
Okay.
If you want to move on to the baby box.
So we're tabling it?
Table with it.
I'm not,
Or you're declining it?
I'm not going to pose any action towards this matter. It doesn't sound like Don is.
That's a no. Okay. Baby box, I know that I had questions from the attorney last month about the insurance. And I did check with Safe Haven Baby Boxes, and once the baby is put in the box and the lid is closed, they have take on all liability for that. However, I have found out that with volunteer fire departments, the baby box has to be within 1 mile of the hospital, which we are not. I have 2 other options that I would like to have a baby box put in would be Center Township, the one that's across from Walgreens there, which is right by the hospital, or the EMT office, which is actually fully manned 24 hours, and they do have, I believe, one side of the building does not have cameras, the EMT office. So that would be my next thing. I'm still gonna proceed with, or I would like to keep going with this, not for my township, but for the county.
That was my thing. I think it needed to be more centralized.
Yeah, I did find that out. I didn't know that at
I
first.
didn't either, but
Yeah,
I figured it'd be better to the, closer to the hospital would be.
and this was brought, you had mentioned at last month's meeting that it was brought up once before, and it was. Becky Bailey had brought it up with Eric Wood. And they had done research also, and they said the EMT office there right by the hospital would be the perfect site. And it was tabled. No discussion. I mean, it was not further acted on.
So,
So I mean, that's the place where we're at right now. I didn't mean to interrupt, but
so
as
that's,
far as a place, a location,
did anyone that you talked to, as far as the locations, get the process started for the $10,000 grant that,
that $10,000 grant that Rachel had sent to me last month
yeah, the due
Is-
date was last Wednesday.
was May 31st. But that was only if you already had purchased it, you had to turn in your receipts for that, and we have not. So that didn't apply.
I'm glad you're checking into it, Sherry, but if you would,
I mean, it's
Jackie.
something that the county needs. I mean,
Yeah.
if somebody wants to drop off a baby, would you rather have it in a dumpster or would you rather have it in a safe place that where you would save a life? If it saves a life, even if it's up for 20 years and you save one baby's life, to me, it's worth it.
I'm
How do
not
we know
against,
the- how do we know the
Oh,
hospital wouldn't? Sorry,
I'm
Don.
not against it at all. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying I'm glad you're pursuing it, but let's look into the grant. The grant money's out there. Let's get it, even if it takes just a little longer.
I had talked to Becky Bailey this morning, actually, she couldn't be here at the meeting, and she did get some money when she had first started talking about this through the Northern Indiana Community Foundation. She also got somebody to actually install it too. So I mean, I can have that information probably for you next month if you wanna
Sure.
route. Okay.
Charlie,
Yeah, Dave.
you know, our relationship is always growing with the hospital. Why would, like, if the baby has to go to the hospital anyways, I wonder if the hospital would participate in this some way.
Because they have cameras all around. And this is all based on an anonymous donate,
So you're saying we want to install this outside of our cameras at the EMS base?
correct.
I think she's saying so that they don't see who's putting them in there, Dave.
Yeah, that's the rationale behind that is to not discourage someone from
Right.
utilizing the box for fear of being identified and potentially
Right.
prosecuted for child abandonment.
Right.
Gosh, I mean, for me, I think we do want to do things for the kids. I just think of the numbers I heard more recently about homeless kids. I'd really love to know what the statistics are. Do we have this kind of thing happening in Stark County? Is this common in small communities like ours, or?
We're so rural that the nearest baby box is 25 miles away. So if you have a teenage mother or just even an adult mother who's gonna drop off a baby, would you rather, I mean, to me, it's one of this or two of that, and would you rather have them put it in a safe place? Or would you rather have it in a dumpster here in Stark County, and then we'd make the news again?
I think what he was asking is,
I mean,
how
that,
often do we find a baby in a dumpster?
Yeah, sorry, Mark, that's it, really, yeah.
maybe not that often, but I don't know. I mean, to save one life, to me, is worth it.
I don't think it's a bad idea. I think we just need to look at grants and see what we can do to
That's
help
fine.
get it, so.
And I can have more information next month if you just want me to come back.
There's a lot of non-county funds that have been dedicated to these sort of efforts, and we want to make sure we utilize those first.
Right, that's fine. Okay, so I have a new, let me say new business. We don't have any primary instructors right now. I would like to have county possibly provide funds for an EMR class,
EMR being,
emergency medical responder, which would include our firemen. So any volunteer firemen could take this class. And they are actually responders that can do some type of medical help for injuries or illnesses when they respond, instead of waiting for a paramedic or an EMT to arrive. I do have a fireman from California Township who is going to take the class to be a primary instructor. I know like Larry Brock was a primary instructor, Travis Clary, he's for our region. And he's unavailable as of now to teach currently. But we did approve for our firemen, one guy to take this primary instructor class. It will be finished by the middle of July, at the end of July at the latest. So for this class to start would probably be in the fall or shortly thereafter,
and
July.
and you have 15 people from California. Fire.
No, it would be countywide. It would be all the fire departments. So it would be Hamlet, it would be Coons Lake, it could be Center Township, it could be whatever fire departments want to be involved.
Okay, so you don't have a
A
preliminary
class list,
roster.
no. I mean, it's something that we need. You don't have enough emergency responders currently, which would be, they could take another class to go to the next step if they wish to do that.
It's more of a matter of opinion as far as if we have enough, because I can't say that we've been lacking on our ability to respond.
I'm sure with this, there's probably, I mean, there's the grant available for something like this, I'm sure. I mean, there's grants every day for everything pretty much. And
Well, and their FSSA has come out quite a bit lately.
That's Homeland Security, do you know?
Potentially, I don't remember all the different agencies that still have buckets from at the federal level to deal with the ARPA funds. But I know there are still grants being created under ARPA for the ones that weren't distributed to the lower governmental units.
Okay.
From the feds.
Okay.
Hey, Charlie.
First.
Charlie,
yeah, Dave,
I just wanted to let Sherry know, I don't know if she's talked to Jim Garner lately, but I attended a grant class at Sampier Fire the other night and Jim was there. I think Jim might be an instructor. I know he's a paramedic.
No, that's who we actually approved.
Okay,
Take the class to be a primary instructor.
but he may have some grant information too that might come into play on that because, you know, we obviously appreciate the help that that the volunteer fire departments, contribute to this. I mean, there's no doubt about that, but I don't know if you're aware, Sherry, there was a meeting a while back where some firemen came in and at least one fire department claimed that they wanted to get paid for doing EMS calls. And technically the stance from the state is that's why they give you a fire budget now. I mean, 40% or north of that typically are medical calls. So, the state already knows that. So that's what they put into the fire budget. But I think we want to know, or at least I want to know, and maybe this can happen through Kenny Fost. I don't know if anybody from fire is there at the meeting too. I know Bruce has been working with the fire departments as well, but I think we need to know too, though, do all 7 fire departments still want to run EMS calls, or are they wanting to get paid from the county? Because we'll never have a budget for that. So we obviously really appreciate it.
Do you know when there's gonna be another grant workshop?
You know what? Off the top of my head, no. Jim might know that, but I know there's the AFG grant. I don't know if that's going to provide a whole lot of training for EMS. There is an EMS grant coming up. There's a SAFER grant that they were talking about. They had some, some training, some ways to get trainings for the firefighters. So Jim may have probably better information on that, Sherry, but I'll see what I can find, and I'll ask Tori to ask around the district at the next district meeting if I'm not there as well.
Okay. I have something to say.
Don, did you have anything to say on this?
Oh, that was it.
Right. So I can be put on the agenda for next week, okay?
Or the end of next one? That'd be all right.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, so it's on the July. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the payroll claims in the amount of $287,008.75?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Is there a motion to approve the vendor claims in the amount of $352,268.76?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
The motion to approve the payroll claims in the amount of $295,203.43.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Is there a motion to approve the minutes from Friday, May 26th, 2023?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is there a motion to approve the minutes from Monday, May 15th, 2023?
So moved.
Second.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, next on our agenda, I guess it stems from a meeting we had last Wednesday, 31st. I was there, a few others in the audience were there, well, quite a few of you. Council members also. I guess we basically talked about a cap or a moratorium on solar. I guess if anyone wants to speak on it, give you a few minutes each, just so we can get through everybody.
You want to start?
Yes, sir.
I'll start carrying that set, but anyway, my issue is, I mean, it's everybody's ground, whatever it is. My issue is how close is it gonna be to my house? What if these things catch fire? What happens to my livestock? Who plans for that? How do you get a fire department in there? Bottom line is, when you look at the whole thing, if you and I weren't paying for it in subsidies, it would never work. And it never will work. And the government, I know I worked for the power company for 37 years, as a power plant operator. it doesn't have the capacity to put that on the grid unless the power company sets aside a generator to take up the bars and make up the difference. So what I'm saying is there needs to be a lot more discussion, maybe a moratorium until they get some of these issues resolved, especially with the safety, health and safety of the communities and of the people that it's going to surround. Because looking at the map, I'm literally almost going to be surrounded.
The map that he referred to, I just received copies before. I don't know if you guys would like.
Please.
These were obtained just this last week from the Color's office.
Just one set of copies.
I don't have them collated because we were just. Wait, that's one. Second of the side. I'm making your packet.
Okay, okay. So
I'm
that-
waiting for it.
All right,
There
I'll
you
set
go.
these
So
out.
this is one, that's one.
All right. You got one, I got one. We're good.
I think if you look at those. When you look at that visual, I found it very disconcerting and startling. Living in the west side of the county, it's sickening. Look at this.
Anyone else want to speak on it?
Yes, sir. Workman's my name. I own 80 acres there, right close to where the attorney live there. And, I got a couple of issues, my property value. I've invested, I planted over 150,000 trees on my property. I'm in that program with the AFC office there with the trees and the whole deal. I've created a wildlife sanctuary. And has anybody ever even considered the impact upon the wildlife in our area? An environmental impact of any kind, let alone the devastation and loss of my property value and everything I've worked for my whole life. And we're living, I bought in agricultural land. I wanted to live in agricultural land. I built a very expensive home in agricultural. And now it appears that we're going to turn into a industrial wasteland here. So I'm extremely concerned.
I have a question. So when this doesn't work in 7 years and they decide, Trump gets reelected, whatever happens, what's gonna happen to those solar panel fields? They're just gonna sit there, right? And
No.
like he said, we moved, built our home there. I mean, completely we redid this house and we built our life there. And we had no notification that this was going in and they're going right across the street from our house. He's directly diagonal for me, nothing. So, and the wildlife, exactly. So aren't sand cranes in danger over there? How is that, we got a lot of endangered animals. That's not doing anything for that. I mean, what's the plan here? What do you want to do with this?
Well, that's why we're talking about a moratorium or a cap, because I want to see these projects completed before we add any more projects to the system. If they fail, well, then we have a cap in place. So there is a bond, a decommissioning bond in place. If they go, whatever scenario happens, that would take, it's reviewed every 5 years.
But if I was gonna put up a large dairy, wouldn't I have to get permission from all my neighbors? I'm still in agriculture.
I'm not 100% on that process.
What?
I'm not 100% on what that process is.
That is. If I was gonna put in a large hard farm, I would have to have permission
That's
from,
what by Hamlet they've done now.
they've shut them down before because neighbors didn't want them. Nobody notified me that this was about to happen, that things were gonna change for me.
I feel like a moratorium would be a good thing until the public better educates themselves as to what's going on in our community. And, the products and everything, you just need to be, the public needs to be better educated so that, we can form more educated, opinion on it. I feel like, there's a big part of the county that, doesn't have any clue on it, and, way too many unanswered questions. For me, you look at the loss of the farmland in the county already, and then you add the Propel US 30 project that if and when it does go through, we're going to lose even more farmland on top of that. So how much are we willing to sacrifice in the name of growth, I guess? And that I feel, as I said before, that like major decisions that would impact the county, like, the solar farms and trying to take us to complete green energy. I feel like some of those things should be put on a ballot or referendum for the community to vote on, because you're obviously never going to get everybody in the community to a meeting, to hear everybody's input. Separate jurisdictional meetings with representatives, like the council did with this other one. Would you get more feel of how your individual constituents feel that? For me, I think the referendum on a ballot for something that is this life impacting would go a long way.
Is that a scenario that would be possible, something on a ballot?
Sure, it would be acceptable with the process of a referendum. You'd have to be pointed for the question. You want to see a cap in place, maybe offering levels of a cap. Just you want solar not, because the reality is we have solar and contracts in place. We'd have to be pointing with our question, but probably I'd look into the process.
And what I think might make sense though is to look at a moratorium in the meantime. It's a cap. So if we're gonna vote on it, that's probably not gonna happen this November. And there's a land grab going on.
Because now when you and I spoke earlier, we talked about moratorium or cap, and I guess the cap would be probably a better approach because we can increase or decrease it compared to a moratorium. I mean, it's pretty much a pause in the projects. So,
Yeah, that kind of, one segue into the other, right? They kind of go hand in hand. If you're going to consider a cap, you probably want to put a moratorium so you can get the information better back your decisions to cap it. You just have to be able to justify one way or the other as we decide to go. And the concern is now that we're going to have 15 solar projects, try to implement public solar projects, which I think is a big concern. For good reason by a lot of people. Maybe the moratorium until solar cap can be in places, but I think one goes with the other. Just saying we're going to cap it today because of input is probably grounds to get reversed on a challenge. So
Here's another copy of the Whitley County ordinance moratorium. I was informed by their county zoning administrator that it passed.
I almost see it that if like there wasn't a moratorium put tonight, that the solar company would see that they're getting pushed back, so they're going to hurry up and try and get everything mixed out before the moratorium is put on. Not saying it would happen that way, but if I was a big business, and I saw that they're getting ready to put a foot down, I would try to get as much as I can before. So like, because I feel like a moratorium should be in place tonight until we can figure out further our next step.
I think right now we're at 12% of the farmland used, or maybe a little higher now, I think, but
Excuse me, I have a question.
yes, sir.
So on your map, all these yellow areas that are proposed but not permitted. Could you stop those from going in with a moratorium?
Well, that's the issue. I think them are recorded. So there's contracts, I believe, in place probably.
It's recorded but not permitted, right? So could you
Right.
stop the permit for them to do that?
having reviewed a lot of these solar contracts myself, usually when they have their options release. So they have conditions predicate to, the execution of a lease. It says, for example, this is a thing down in Pulaski County where for a long time it was just a special exception, it wasn't permitted like up here in Stark County. Is it says if it's permitted, If the permit is granted, then we enter into a lease. So what you're probably seeing recorded is a lot of options to lease, which have that condition precedent in it, which say if it's permitted, if zoning is met, then we enter into a lease. So I don't know. I'd have to go through each one and see what was recorded. Some of them may just be options, which don't bind you to anything because they're not options between you, solar company, and a landowner, which is options between the solar company and the landowner. See what I'm saying? So I'd have to see what all those recordings were, which would take some time. Maybe people have that.
I actually have quite a few things to.
Maybe Cassie could provide it to me because I see them, there's quite a bit of information out there. It's hard to know all of it. And I've not, because we've not said this is what we want to do, look into it to a great extent, yeah, other than just reviewing what our options are at this point. Moratoriums are, it's a 2-page ordinance. They're not that difficult. So instead of that's what you want to go with, go with it.
I think another reason to consider that is also based on one of the other documents that Mandy Thomason provided me from the recorder's office, which is the UCC fixture filing filed by Mammoth North LLC regarding their financing from Deutsche Bank that Mr. Barlong voiced some concern about. What happens if Mammoth breaks this contract they have with Deutsche Bank? Deutsche Bank comes into our county and has to say so, basically takes over the leases of our property. That's like a world conglomerate bank.
Well, with that, when they, if they did take over, they're taking all the mineral rights, oil, gas, and carbon and water rights to that property, which I would find very disturbing, especially when so many things are being thrown down our back by foreign or people from foreign countries. And the other thing I'd like to say is, I mean, last week we heard talk that there's all kinds of studies about it's not going to affect your property value. You know, I'm a simple person. And a lot of this stuff you could get hopefully buried in and get overburdened by the abundance of information, some true, some false. But I ran across documentation that if a house is surrounded on 3 or 4 sides by solar panels, that property was useless.
Worthless.
And yeah, worthless. And this person gave testimony to that effect in front of an appeals court here in the state of Indiana. And even people 3 miles away from a 100,000 megawatt unit will have property evaluation. They don't necessarily have to be on the border of a fenced in industrial complex, which I see most of these panels. I have to say that I feel for the farmers. They have farmland. They should be able to do what they want to do with it. That's fine in my mind until it's installed. And when it's installed, it's automatically I would classify it as an industrial complex. All the solar panels with a military type gating system with barbed wire on the top. Yeah, that's to keep the animals out. And maybe some of us human animals too. It's I don't know how many people make a trip to Wheatfield and going across Route 10. And that's an area that had an environmental study. When I attempted to look up that study, I did find copies of it. We recorded down in the state. Try to look up if the sandhill cranes were involved in that study, because that is a well-established migration path. And I just see nothing on that document. Of course, a lot of the pages of the environmental study were redacted or blacked out. You couldn't read. Things were maybe had someone's name, I don't know, but But right now where the panels are installed, that's exactly where over the last, since 97. When we were moving from Wheatfield to Stark County. We've seen all these birds land or even try to land on corn harvest fields. Now I kind of feel, I don't know how they're gonna land on top of solar panels. And with everything that we're seeing here, I think a common person has to agree that we're getting lambasted by something like companies that smell it's easy picking time. They're rushing in here trying to grab our land. They don't care what we do here. I mean, why would someone in Israel care what we do with our land? Someone has to take an overlooking view of this. Many years ago, when I was in England, or visited England, small towns, kind of like North Judson, surrounded by farmland. The towns actually established green zones. Where here's the town, here's a border, this is agricultural land, and you could not change that. And that, I guess the farmers really would have much say so if they want to lease the land or not. It was condemned in their way of thinking. So I'd be in favor of anything that we could do as quickly as possible to cap. I mean, and I think our Stark County government could work a lot faster than some other governments, but there's just too many unanswered questions. I mean, when I seen that map that's circling, and I have appreciation for trees. I don't hug trees, but I know what trees do for us, just like corn or soybeans. They're all carbon capturing devices. But trees are kind of more so than the corn and the soybean. But yet I see there's proposed panel installations. Apparently these solar panel companies maybe figure out a way to mount solar panels on top of the trees because all their local websites say that we're not taking trees out. Why would we permit that? A tree in the most freest way possible is capturing the carbon as compared to carbon capturing plants that are coming in our areas. That's going to cost a lot of money. And it's going to absorb a lot of energy in order to capture that carbon, CO2. So I don't know what else to say other than let's cap it.
Hey, Charlie,
Yeah, Dave.
I don't want to leave that part of it though, because like we spent a lot of time. Well, first of all, these projects don't happen overnight. We spent a lot of time working on this and negotiating it. But as far as the trees go, both companies are working around the trees. I mean, that was part of the deal. I mean, and they didn't want to go through the expense of having to deal with the trees. But one of the things too that I noticed nobody brought up is that NIPSCO is blowing the candle out on two coal-powered plants that they're actually the operator now of the NextEra project. So they're taking 750 to try to make up for some of the 1250 that they're losing by closing their plants. And so, but the other thing I would say, just real quick while I'm on the mic, is if we are going to have a meeting, discuss this further, I didn't hear one person that in the audience there that's a property owner that's in the fence. I think those farmers and property owners should be involved. And I think the prospective ones, the ones that are for or against, but I think the ones that are involved in this business should be the ones speaking on this as well. Not just, I mean, obviously we have some people that are surrounded by panels. I get it. But then there's a bunch of people there that think they know about toxicity of panels, that they think they can speak on behalf of the property owners. I think you need to hear from the property owners, and a bigger public meeting might be a good idea for this. I don't know. I'm just speaking out.
Did I just say that?
Well, he mentioned that, at the meeting last week that, he wanted to hear from property owners. Property owners didn't show up, voting citizens did. We're all voting citizens. Every one of our voices should hold just as much merit as the next. I'm a property owner, but just because I don't own a farm doesn't mean I shouldn't have to say so in what goes on in my community, in my county. These are life-changing decisions that are being made and shouldn't just be left up to just the farmers and the property owners. You should.
That's not what I said. I said the property owner should be.
It's twice now, I have heard you tell us that basically because we're not the property owners, our opinions don't matter. You want to hear from the property. owner.
That's not what I said.
It's exactly what came out of your mouth. So,
Jay.
Okay, I'm kind of speaking to Don Bakley here because you guys all know how I feel. I've been here several times. I'm Jay Troiki. And to Dave's point, I don't disagree with what Dave said. But I didn't hear, when I came here, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, or whatever, I've been here a few times. And my point was that without zoning, this was wrong to do without zoning. You guys remember what I said, because the neighbors are not notified, neighboring homes, nobody's notified, nobody knows what's going on. Didn't hear anybody say, we ought to have a big public meeting and get everybody involved. Now, when you're talking about capping it, well, we need to have a big public meeting and get the other side involved.
I would like to
That's
know,
fine, but I didn't hear that before.
I would like to know how many of these property owners that already have leases that you, Mr. Pearman, have personal relationships with. How many of them are your friends? How many do you have personal relationships with?
Could I?
Once again, people are assuming that kind of thing. I don't know many of them. I wish I knew more of them, but I don't know many of them.
I'd just like to say something. Please don't attack Dave personally. I don't agree with Dave. I ran for the county council because I wasn't happy with the solar panel. But I want to speak on Dave's behalf because we can't just snap our fingers and have a 500 man or woman employed factory here. I believe that the office holders that were before us had the best interest of Stark County, but I don't think, I agree with Jay. Had there been more zoning talks, we would have probably had a better understanding. But please, and Dave and I are on the opposite side sometimes, but don't attack him personally because he was looking at what he felt was the best interest of the county. That's
I'm not attacking personally. I'm just saying that was the second time that we've been told basically that it's not our voices that they want to hear from. It's the property owners that already have leases and the farm owners that their voices matter or don't. That's what I've been told twice now. And so I'm not attacking, I'm just addressing this.
But that, just for the record, that's not what I said. The other thing I said at the last meeting was there's 23,000 plus people in the county. It'd be nice to hear from more than just 20 people.
No, you asked how many of you here own farms? You asked how
No,
many.
I just wanted to know if there was anybody there because I can't see who's in the room. I can only see Charlie and Mark.
I was talking about last
I
week's
think
meeting.
that goes to a comment Jay made, though, that there should have been big public meetings on the front end of this. And that's exactly why, we're gonna take some heat next week at that meeting we're having over in San Pierre about the water supply. But we're having that meeting first before we bring it to any commissioning body or the council. Because we want to let the public be involved in the process from the get-go, and it wasn't done.
I mean, you have to understand that many of us did not know anything about this until last Wednesday morning when it was found out, or 2 weeks ago when we had the first meeting in North Judson. That's when we first heard about this. Last Thursday in the afternoon, we seen the potential impact it's gonna pull upon the county with the colored map of what's going on. So I tried to do my part by informing at least my neighbor. I think there was 2 people out of the 13 to 15 people I talked to heard about it. They thought it was down the street. They weren't too concerned about it. Just seen their eyes when they realized, no, you're right next to it. There's a nice subdivision. they found out. And they're gonna be on the west side of a solar panel, which is the most reflective side of a panel system, depending on how they, if they put trees up to stop the view.
Lisa's been trying to get a word in.
All right, just want to make a couple of points. As far as education, this goes all the way back to the beginning. What's driving solar farms are the power companies. The power companies switching from coal-fired power to green energy. Another point that may be an educational piece is the two main power grids that serve the whole country run through Stark County. So that's why Stark County is desirable for this type of project. I understand both sides. The landowner that's involved wants to be involved in the project. The landowner who is next door that doesn't want to be. So again, not trying to be biased one way or the other, but just to try and give you a little bit of background as to why Stark County is even considered. That's the main reason that Stark County is being considered for these projects. Secondly, I mean, there were meetings. There was an Nextera meeting, a very large meeting at Sampier before this project started. So,
The only reason anybody knew about that meeting was pretty much because of me.
Could she continue,
and me,
please?
I mean,
Go ahead.
we blasted it out everywhere. We sent it to, you know, everybody we knew to make sure that the entire Railroad Township was there. It was very well attended. And, education is a big piece of it, and I get that. But, the thing about the trees, these folks are not looking for land that's covered in trees. They're not going to spend the money to take down trees. They don't want trees in their project. The last point that I'll make is of this land that's secured for these projects. Only a portion of that land will have solar on it, could be 20% or less of the land that is secured under lease or sale for these projects will have the potential to have a solar panel even on it. So while it sounds like, you know, 12% of our farmland is being secured for these projects, about 20% of that 12% may have solar panels on it.
Nobody's gonna farm around those fences. I'm not gonna show up to plant 36 rows of corn on 100, a quarter-mile track all the way around the fence. That's just not. It's
Well,
gonna be trees and it's gonna overgrow.
I just wanted to give a few little tidbits of why we are where we are today, how it came to be, and why Stark County is even a consideration. But NIPSCO obviously is shutting down their coal fire. This is driving these kinds of projects. So while a lot of people hope that it'll never come, and it's already coming, and based on who's in the White House, it's going to change. I'm not sure that it is. I think that green energy will be here no matter who's in the White House. And we have to be prepared for it and do what we can do to help the process along as painlessly as possible, I guess. So, and one of the things that there's economic development agreements in place. The county stands to make quite a bit of money. The taxes, everything will be affected because of these projects. These
I'd
are
like to
huge.
say something on that. Now, that money won't come in until these projects are completed.
Right, it will, the first monies probably will be seen in 25 would be my guess, at the end of the Mammoth project, or potentially the end of 24, once they're up and going. But I feel like once the county sees these economic development payments coming in annually, that hopefully, as far as from an economic point of view, they will realize the benefits there.
I got a question. I'm coming into this late, just came to the first meeting of last week. It seems to me that these solar farms are coming in to the county, not just here, but along everywhere else. They're coming into the people, to the farmers first, before they're approached, before it gets to the county level. If these companies aren't doing this, that's the problem where it needs to be nipped in the butt. Because if it's incorporating into the county needs to say, hey, this is what the company coming in should say, look, we want to put solar here. What's your interest? And how much of your property are you willing to give up? That standard should have been set initially, instead of going and picking out here and picking out there and taking out of here. And then the county is like, well, how much do we have involved in this?
If it is addressed to the county first, none of this problem would have ever happened. If we have a farmer's got 5,000 acres. And he wants to donate it all, and we're on, I'm gonna say a 10% cap. That 5,000 acres is all we allow. But because the company are allowed to come in and talk to individual people, I know 3 or 4 farmers alone that have been told different prices for the exact same, an acre is an acre. One farmer was getting 3,000, one farmer was getting 9,000.
It's on the company. There's different companies.
But that's what I'm saying, they're not going to our county reps, they're going to the farmers first, and that's how they're sneaking in, they're weaseling their way in.
So you have your hand up briefly.
So I'm confused, just a point of clarification. I have a farm in Stark County and I received a letter 2 years ago notifying me that there was the potential for a solar farm to go in my neighbor's farmland. But that's not. It was pretty official. I assumed everybody got letters.
No.
No.
It's farm that they wanted.
I want to talk about it. It's to Mr. Perman's defense. I'm a physician. I'm trained to listen to things objectively and everything. And you and I are sitting in the same room. And I heard him say what he just repeated. He said that he did not say that he wanted his the constituents that own land that's going to be leased over anybody else. He thought that they were underrepresented in this meeting. He wanted them to be included. That's what I heard. So when emotion gets into it, your objectivity goes away. And I think, I agree with the gentleman in the back, when you start telling somebody that he said something that he said that he's trying to clarify, you gotta be careful when you're going down that road. I didn't hear him say what you said he said. I heard him say what he said he's saying when he's speaking. I couldn't see who it was, somebody behind me. There was repeatedly.
There is another option. You don't have to cap the acres. Just raise the permit fees to a crazy dollar amount, and that will slow them down. Like Lisa said, we have the grid through Stark County. So if you raise your permit fees up, that'll slow them down, and then you'll get the best of the companies coming in here.
I think maybe after the fact of maybe a moratorium or a cap, we could still do that. I mean,
Right.
so it's in there. But
And I think.
But you're not putting a negative feel out. You're just saying, hey, we're raising our permit fees up.
I just wanted to follow up on something Lisa said about after a time when we start receiving the money and the public will start seeing the benefits. Well, I think that's exactly what everybody here that's asking for at least a moratorium is asking for. Is that time to assess the whole situation and see, well, maybe these benefits are gonna outweigh any damage to the soil or the wildlife, or that I have to look at this forest of metal down the road for me. Maybe we will decide that the money's worth it. Maybe we won't, but we're asking for the time, and that's exactly what a moratorium will do.
yes, maybe.
A quick question. I didn't know this was going on tonight. But have you checked into the solar farms that were put here? I was told, I don't remember if it was Durrell, NIPSCO, whoever, that the power's not even staying in Indiana. It's like Ohio and some other states.
Yeah, Mammoth
Yeah,
goes to the east.
Power is like a
Next
water.
area.
It goes.
Next area is.
It goes on the grid.
Yeah.
Goes on
Goes on
grid.
the grid and
It's
whoever
like
applies
water.
to the grid, and then they take it off. It doesn't shoot it any place. It's on the grid and everybody takes their own.
I just want to piggyback on what Cassandra said, what you said in regards to the economic impact, right? I understand the goal and why we did what we did, right? We can't stop what's already happened. But to her point, what is that economic? What are we gonna see from it? We don't know. And if we continue to do this, you're not gonna have anybody here left to see that impact, right? If people start moving, like myself and my husband who moved out of Lake County to get to a community like this, you know, if this starts developing too much, we're out of here. And what you're gonna be left with is a very different group of people that have very different expectations. So again, I think that we need that opportunity to see, what are we gonna get from it? I mean, it's great that we're gonna get tax dollars, but what are those tax dollars going to?
To not take phone calls during the meeting? Whatever his name is.
Dave.
It's very rude.
In relation to.
Sorry, that's my husband.
In relation to, you know, David, let's take a pause. I have a little bit of an abstract question. It was mentioned that the solar panels are battery ready. Okay? In the future, when those batteries were getting ready to be installed, as part of this process, submittals to you guys, do you guys know what that's gonna look like? I mean, do we know what these batteries, are they gonna be on site, or are they gonna be remote, are they gonna be, do we know what that looks like? When any of those batteries ever go in?
Now,
Because that could be a major impact. And a major construction project, depending on how those batteries. I mean, it's not gonna be as simple as just dropping a Connex box inside a fence.
Well, that's Mammoth was not supposed to have batteries on site. I think they're battery ready, I believe. Now Nextera. I think those were gonna be in Jasper.
Yeah, there's no batteries in start.
Yeah. So there's
They
nothing.
never can have enough batteries anyway for.
Right.
Never.
I want to make one point, I'll let
Yeah.
everybody else, you guys know about it. In this, I don't know what you're gonna do here tonight or anything. But out by me on the Mammoth. That's done. I mean, there's no sense putting something in that's gonna stop that or temporarily stop it or whatever, it's done. They're waiting on panels and it's done. So I don't see anything good coming out of saying, we're gonna pause that project. It's way beyond pause.
That's the I don't think we want to pause any projects that are going on. We just want to see them. At least I do. I want to see them get finished before we move on.
Charlie, I've been trying to talk on.
Okay.
I got two things to say. I want to start with. There's a lot of people in the room that haven't talked. I don't think anybody that's talked once or twice or three times already ought to have another go at it until everybody's had their chance. But just one thing I wanted to suggest to the commissioners is what's being asked here is that local government interferes with private enterprise. And I think you need to go slow in taking steps toward that end. So.
I got something I can add to that. If you want to slow the process, I think if possible, the county should step in and say, if you're going to do this, the Green Act, use all electric EV powered equipment. I got one.
You know what?
Why not? They're making it. It's all gas, diesel. There's nothing on their property that's green.
You know, but honestly, believe me, I know that Larry's all about this, and I'm all for you, Larry. I would like to see you stand up and argue why this is better and we should all do this. And why we should all slow
I'll be
down.
glad to take a little time and do that, but I want to ask, can I address that point?
Yeah. Just don't argue.
No, I'm not arguing. I'm
I'm
just,
just talking to you. I'm not talking to him.
yeah, 'cause you
The,
don't like reason or logic or anybody that questions. it.
The point of this meeting is for us to collect.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I apologize.
Absorb the information and so we can make our decisions that reflect.
I do have a statement though, is that.
Wait a
I
minute,
was
wait a
halfway
minute.
serious with that.
Something.
I was halfway serious. I'm just saying for the people that are here with panels and that are for them. I think you guys should use this opportunity to try to. Spill to us why it is a good thing. And why we should be less aggravated with it.
Why it's a good thing for anybody other than them.
Okay, go ahead.
Can I address that? Okay. First of all, the reason that NIPSCO decided to go all green and close down their coal plants wasn't because they're all about green. It was economics. Corporations are there to make money, and their decision was based on the fact that the renewables, and particularly solar now, are a lot less expensive to use to make electricity than are coal or the other forms of coal or even natural gas. That was the big reason why they switched. Another reason is you're never going to run out of solar. You're always going to have solar. Coal is not going to be here forever. And the other thing is they don't produce, solar panels don't produce pollution. And you don't have the associated climate effects that you get from the coal pollution. Those are the main reasons that I see why this, why we're going to solar. And one other thing I'll add to, Lisa said some good reasons why Stark County is a preferred site. You know, we have flat land, but also there's capacity in our transmission lines. And as long as there's capacity in there, there's going to be somebody putting electricity into that. And Stark County is ideally located for that, to use solar.
I will correct and say that there is, they are going green, not because of the cost of it. They're going green because of Agenda 2030, which was signed into place. The Green Act was signed into place.
That's right.
So it's not that, you know, it saves us money and all those reasons that you listed. Straight up, because it's a bill, it's a law. And we're all slowly transitioning into it. So I will say that part right there, I'll disagree with.
One hard fact to get around is half of the time it's nighttime.
There's someone in the back we haven't heard from.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. So someone said that it's only gonna be a certain percentage of the solar fields or solar panels on the property. Now, are we talking about the whole farm, like maybe the farmer owns a property here, 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 or here? Are we talking about his overall farm or hers? Or their whole ownership? Or are we talking about, like, let's say there's a section right next to me that's gonna have some, let's just say. And are you saying that only 20% of that property is gonna have solar? Because that's not what I see when I drive downtown. I see it wall to wall. And another thing is, there's those fences. Now, am I gonna have to look out and see deer skewed on there when they start hopping over? Cause I know somebody in Valpo that's got a old, one of those fences that's like wrought iron and it has the things on it. It's very beautiful, except when the deer impale themselves on it, it's not very beautiful. And what's gonna happen to the deer population? I mean, I know there's a ton of them, but they're, and I also, I wanna just say one more thing, cause when driving down 10, it's been so aggravating to see how it looks, what it used to look like. Way back in 100 years ago, we already drained the Kankakee for progress for the farmers so that they could farm and tame the land. Now we've got this fantastic soil, or I have been growing up my whole life being told that it's great soil. Now we're going to scrape it off or whatever and put these panels on. And I'm not even against solar. My mom had it on the side of our house from 1975 till 2020 at her house that she had in Chesterton. They were right on the side of the house and they worked great. We never had, you know, there wasn't any tornado or anything that hit our house or something like that, but it heated half of our house. And so it supplemented and it works. I mean, I'm not against it completely, but I just wish that it could be not so land scarring. I mean, to me, it's like seeing when you see open pit mining and it's just, the land is just torn up. And when we talked about, somebody talked about the sandhill cranes. Okay, so I know that the answer would be, well, there's so many of them, even some states hunt them. Texas and Michigan, I believe, hunt sandhill cranes. But with also the sandhill cranes come the endangered whooping cranes. And there's only about 800 of them in existence. And I mean, the babies that are raised are hatched in captivity. Every single one of those whooping cranes has a tag on it if you go out and see it. This year, where I saw the whooping crane was literally right next to a subdivision. And you're not really even supposed to tell people where you see it because they're so endangered that they try to keep that private. And the Crane Foundation, there's some kind of loophole that their hands are tied because it's all with the private companies. But you know, at some point you just say, can there be a break? Like, can there be maybe that farm, you know? And I'm not seeing 20% of that field. I'm seeing 100% of that field filled with the panels, with the exception of the easement along the road. I mean, when I drive by, that's what it looks like. And then the property values, I'm not planning on selling my house, but if I was to sell my house, I did look at some studies online, you know, where you try to find it, and it said, oh, maybe 1 to 2.5% with it, because they did a study within people within 1 mile radius. Well, what about if it's right up against your property? I would think that would, you know, I have a little bit of a buffer, but even if I didn't,
I would think that that would decrease my value. I wouldn't want to buy a house right next to that. I don't know who would.
Charlotte, Larry. So speaking about the lady's views there about the unfinished solar project. It's not even finished yet. Anything that's unfinished is not beautiful or not attractive. All right, so just setting that straight, Sandy.
What about the fences? Are they gonna then come down, those big fences that look? They go up.
No,
like this
I'm
and
not
then-
gonna get into that. I'm just saying the
I'm
project's
just-
not finished. Don't judge a project until it's finished because
Oh,
I've gone out and I have seen finished projects that are in operation. And they are not an eyesore.
Okay,
And speaking of, as a farmer in this county for 68 years, I have lived the farm since I was 2 years old. And as a property owner, I have property owners' rights, as you guys have rights. And I exercise my property owners' rights and my farmers' rights.
I respect
You
that, Larry.
guys do.
What happens though? if our
I'm
property
not gonna
values
answer
do go
your
down?
question. It's not, I'm just making my statement like you did for 5 minutes. And right now, I grow corn and soybeans. 80% of my ground is corn and soybeans. And guess what? The first use of my corn and my soybeans is fuel. Soybeans go for ethanol. First thing is for all of us to use fuel. Same way with corn. You know, we've got biodiesel and ethanol. That's the first use for those. And now I try to put solar panels on my farm and everybody in here, without one exception, uses electric. And NIPSCO is shutting down coal generators, probably for good reason. You know, pollution, we've heard that. And another thing I'd like to say, I've sat back quiet for long enough. I hear everybody saying, well, we had no idea. You know, these companies just come in. They just gang rush us here. That's baloney. I see a lot of people, they're neighbors of mine, that were at a meeting in San Pierre where I live and where a lot of you live. Miss Sandra.
Are you addressing me? I thought you wanted to
Yes,
speak.
yes, I am. I'm naming you because you represent the group that says we were notified that this was going
I
on.
wasn't aware I'd been designated a representative making that statement, but I'm happy to serve as that representative. I am a social media and media junkie. I don't recall seeing one notice about that meeting. And one of these leases was signed in 2019, at least one of the copies I have. When was this meeting in San Pierre? I believe it was after that. The lease that's on
It was
400
about 2
South,
years ago.
right, so
I don't know the
2021.
exact date, but all I know is there was 100+ people there. And there were representatives from the solar company, well represented. There was.
There's a lot of money in it, and somebody made a statement about.
They were there to answer any questions.
The first lead's been already put out before. the
Any
meeting.
of those meetings.
Is there anyone that we haven't heard from who would like to make a comment? Yes,
Does anybody have the exact amount of acreage that is already situated with the solar panels?
I didn't bring that number with me.
Last I heard, that was stuff that was reported was 15,000 acres.
15,000 acres.
Can I address that? Of that 15,000 acres, a small portion of that is in these 3 projects. Of the 3 projects that are actually, say Mammoth is in, and NextEra are in process, and Hoosier Solar's the next one in line. Of those 3 with their first phases, it's going to amount to about 4% of our farmland, what's actually taken out of farming. But it's a much smaller number than what's been bandied around.
The gentleman back to Sam.
Yeah, my name is Matt. I live in North Justin, and I didn't hear about this until I had one of my good stewards of me and my neighbor that actually came and knocked on my door. And you know, I moved there 4 years ago. I have 5 small children, honorably discharged combat veteran, and you know, one of the things I wanted was the solitude and the space in my community. Quite frankly, get away from other people, you know, from time that I served overseas. and the things that I saw. And so I don't know how many of the folks that are in here are first time people being in these meetings, but this is the first time I've been here and actually being alerted of what has actually happened. So just wanted to bring that to awareness. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Economic impact, if you look at that map, it's like a patchwork quilt. Who the hell would want to move here when they don't know that something's gonna go up next to them?
Right.
You want more people to come to your county. I wouldn't buy here. If this was happening when we did buy here.
Anyone else?
I just have a question.
Well, we haven't heard from her yet.
Okay,
My name is Melissa Trippenfeldis. My husband and I live out more towards the country in North Judson. We both commute an hour each way to work. I grew up in like Station Hobart area and I return to work there every day. But I can tell you, I come home every night to my sanctuary. I can sit outside on my front porch every morning, drink my coffee, look at the deer, look at the trees, breathe fresh air. And now, because a farmer wants to sell out to a solar company, that is in jeopardy. How much is that, are those solar panels gonna bring in monetarily wise? Whenever we move out, because I don't wanna wake up to solar panels. If I wanna wake up to a solar panel, if I wanna wake up to a building, I'll move back up north where it's more convenient for me to work. I moved out here because, like the gentleman said, there's nobody. It's quiet, it's peaceful, it is joyful. I can let my dogs out in the yard and we can play. But you're gonna put solar panels up and ruin the nature, the trees, the farmland, the fields. A sanctuary that most of us have come out here for to live in. So when everybody starts selling their home, how much are you gonna get for taxes then? How much profit are you gonna make off of? That gentleman's really rude. He's not even listening to this conversation that we're all having. How much money is that gonna bring in compared to the tax money that you're gonna get from people who work like us? And from the taxes on our property? And what's gonna happen when all of your neighbors start selling their homes? Where do you live? Are you gonna wake up next to a solar panel?
No, I wake up next to a hog farm.
I take that over a solar panel.
Oh, no,
And Charlie, if that was for me, I was just plugging in my laptop. My battery just said it was running dead. I'm in my office at work, so.
Well, I
I was
appreciate you guys,
listening.
you paying attention to everybody else instead of diddle daddling over there.
I was plugging in my laptop.
Okay.
I'm also working at the same time. I also have a day job.
Thanks, Dave.
It's all right.
I got something that I'll add to that, I suppose, is, me as a young farmer. I'm kind of phasing out anyways, but I mean, Charlie, you got kids, there's other farmers that got kids, some that are even signed up for panels though. This is primarily one of the reasons why I am planning on not really expanding. And it's Stark County or Pulaski County for the same reason, or Jasper, and I know I'm not the biggest guy on the block, but I do spend a lot of money in the county, and you do as well, and so will your kids and every other grower's kids that actually takes it on. There's not a lot of us, but that's why I support a cap. They got their acres they want, fine, it's already done, let them have it, but that was one of the concerns that I had 3 years ago that I tried to argue with everybody. You guys, that was, you guys only wanted whatever it was back then, a few thousand acres. Well, look where we're at now, and it's only gonna keep getting worse and worse and worse. I understand this is a good area for it due to the electrical grid and stuff, but I think still we shouldn't let it completely get overtaken. Because you gotta think too, the economical impact, seed guy, fertilizer guy, Napa, go uptown, eat every day just about.
Hey, Charlie, since I was called out by the lady in the audience, could I just speak? Because I've been speaking to Brian also, and Brian can vouch for this. I never said I wasn't in favor of a cap. What I said is we should get farmers together, property owners, seed sellers, fertilizer sellers, the co-op. I mean, I think it should be kind of a collective thing and determine what the cap should be. You guys know that I haven't said don't do a cap, but I think it just needs to be educated. That's all. I don't know that we have a full audience, educated of enough audience to give advice on that. But Brian, you know that I've actually been speaking in favor of a lot of things that you say. But we also,
Dave did advocate for us to do that a couple of years ago, and that is my fault for not really following through with that, but you did advocate for that, so I'll give him.
So, I mean, is there anyone we haven't heard from yet? Yes, ma'am.
Once I start talking. I'll make it quick. I have experience with Next Era. I don't have anything in stake in Stark County. I live in Stark County for 71 years, so I hear a lot of these things and I relate to some of them. I'll just speak to Next Era, not these other mammoth and all that. They are a great company involved in a project. They have good setbacks, so it's not right next to anybody's house. They gave letters to people who have residential line close by. That's my experience with them. I don't know about in Stark County. I can't speak to that exactly, but that company did that. There's cosmetic native grasses on all the property, which is under solar, not under solar. Purdue has been very good about giving them guidance on that. The fences are covered with landscaping, the setbacks, so it's not right against people's houses. So the other thing about Next Era, they have, and these are part of their application process elsewhere. I don't know anything about Stark County's application process, but that not only notifying close by residences, but also being involved in setbacks and landscaping and things like that. As to taking farmland out, a lot of farmers that are involved in this are doing it because they want to preserve the family farm, because they have other farms elsewhere. Farming is tricky when it goes to second and third generations. We've lost 7 million acres in Indiana to low density rent, all the houses that have been built. And that takes away farmland. We want to preserve farmland. This is a way to do it. I do agree. I would not want it right next to me. I want a barrier. I want space. As far as wildlife is concerned, there's good wildlife studies on this too. Nothing that we can say is going to stop renewable energy. The project I was involved with was under the Trump administration, because Trump was not opposed to renewable. But he sure as hell wasn't stopping gas and oil like the latest version. But it was all of the above. And with this electrification of everything, transportation of all sorts, which is stupid, but it's coming because these car companies, they're going to get electrified for everybody, even if we don't want them. But we have to produce electricity. And as far as not being connected to NIPSCO, we buy in times of low availability. The NIPSCO shut down, they had fires, coal, 2 gas fired were shut down at Schaefer temporarily. We have to buy on the grid. That's a very expensive process. We're paying for that. Every time they do a raise, we pay for that purchase. Some of this helps, the renewable helps. I don't want to see the whole county in solar. So processing some balance, but more importantly, deal with the better companies, the ones that respect their neighbors. And the decommissioning is excellent with Next Era as well. So I would say quality is also consideration in the application process. So I'll let you guys.
Sir, well, is there anybody that we haven't heard from? Okay.
Yes, I
Just behind you, actually, sir.
all the way in the back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know we've all been chatting about this, but I was just curious, like the bottom line. Like, what are the next steps? What is actually gonna physically take place, after we leave this meeting here today?
Well, I guess it depends on how think on it.
Depends on what gets proposed and put before us. So I sit here awaiting proposals in my group. That's my job behind the stage.
So that's something, I guess, we've already asked Justin, we feel need to have them write up a moratorium or a cap, or if you feel that need.
Charlie, I'd be more in favor of a cap. I think that would give us a little more flexibility.
You have one more comment? you
Yeah,
wanna make?
it's in response to Larry's comment. The meeting with NextEra. I had asked Lisa Dan if she could arrange that because quite a few of Railroad Township citizens were getting quite upset because of all the controversy about the solar panels, and they were concerned about where they were going to be going in at, how close they were going to be to them. And I said, Lisa, please, you've got to get somebody in here and explain it to the people, whether it's good or bad. They have to know what's going on. There was never anything done with Railroad Township prior to any of the contracts that were set in place. I'm sorry, and I know, Larry, you're all gun ho with it, but don't say that everybody knew about it before that meeting, because they didn't. They didn't. That was just an informative meeting after the fact of the contract.
100+ people were at that meeting.
Pardon me?
100+ people.
I understand.
Right.
Ask.
Is there anyone else that we haven't heard from that would like to make a comment? Or anyone that we have heard from? If you have more comments, you're free, please. If you care to, send a letter addressed to the commissioners with all of your comments and concerns, and they will be reviewed.
What? I don't have a comment. What I'd like to know is when you guys make a decision, hold a meeting, anything related to solar panels. I'd like to find out exactly where do you announce that? So if I'm missing it, I know where to go.
Rachel, would you care to review how we advertise our meetings?
Sure. So the commissioners' meetings are always on the first Monday of the month at 5 p.m., the third Monday of the month at 9:30 a.m. Sometimes that varies, but really not really. I mean, they're pretty regular. And the agenda is posted on the county website on Fridays.
But additionally, the advertising requirements we have for our public meetings.
Advertising requirements is me to post it on our door 48 hours prior to the meeting. That's it.
So I gotta waste energy and drive 16 miles.
Yeah, you can find it on WKBI post, they're pretty good at posting.
Nothing against WKBI, but I would look at the website about today's meeting. And I knew last week, fortunately, that we were gonna be talking about solar panels, but there was nothing on WKBI.
And they didn't know about it, they didn't know that they were gonna be addressing this on the agenda.
But the county website will talk about everything that's gonna be discussed.
It'll give you a short snippet, so it does not go into detail, just a little like what you have on the agenda tonight, the green piece of paper.
How long have they had that system?
20 years or more,
Online?
not online probably 10.
So back to the, having you write up something. Now, a moratorium, I mean, that's pretty clean cut to do that. Now, a cap, I mean, we'd have to probably get in the little more acreage and stuff. A moratorium, I guess we can, it's not necessarily pausing the projects that we have now, but I mean, anything after, recorded or whatever.
Yeah, there's a lot to unwind there, depending on what you guys want. So my thinking was if you want to look at a solar cap, and it sounds like at least 2 or 3 commissioners want to look at doing something like that, which is all you need. Then probably can declare a moratorium, which puts an immediate freeze on any new filings for any permits while you decide what that cap is going to be. So the one thing we're gonna have to figure out is, and Larry, because you are de facto representative for Hoosier Solar, you guys are within 30 days of submitting a permit, is that right? I think you said that a few meetings ago.
Yeah, we were looking by the end of the summer.
So I don't know how to treat that, like I said with it.
So I mean, are these the most recent ones that, I mean, this is all that's been recorded for Hoosier?
I've got 2 of it sitting on my desk for about a month and a half, or able to get them in here. Let me put them in before you put it.
The reason Hoosier is the only one that I'm concerned about is because they've been giving us regular updates for over a year now. So we need to figure out how to work that. I mean, all the other solar companies I've heard from, I mean, probably recording options out there, because people here said there's a lot of recorded options, but they've not approached the county, so that's not really our concern. Hoosier is, because they've been working with us, and you start to get into playing the game, you know, if they've been relying on us, communicating with them and then telling us a time frame, and then you say freezing all efforts, including yours, it looks a little bit different. You just tell me what you want to do and what, if you want there to be workaround for Hoosier, if you want to put the moratorium effective. I mean, because any solar company right now that hasn't approached us within the last 12 months is not going to get a permit filed the next 60 days. I've been through this process twice now with the other two companies that have been brought up. It takes a long time. So if you say, you know, Hoosier, you've got 30 days to submit for a permit, and after that, we're going to look at a moratorium and we're going to pass it. You can do that. I'm not telling you to do that. I'm just throwing that out there because I think it should be a consideration. Whatever you guys want to do, I'll put it in the form of an ordinance.
You said what, June or July or something, you'd have?
But you said in the summer, that's.
End of the summer, so look at.
This is not to advocate for Hoosier. This is
I mean,
to advocate for keeping us out of a lawsuit.
There'd be something to exclude Hoosier until they, you know, but all other.
You know, it might be easier
There's
to say
also not
disappear.
the conflicts
It-
and the issues.
It might be easier to say, this is your time frame, Hoosier, you've had a year. You know, we've been waiting a long time for Hoosier. Now they've got a lot of hoops to jump through, but we've been waiting a long time for them. I think we've asked several times. So you can see you've got 60 days. And again, anyone else that's not submitted a permit by then, I don't know if they're gonna be in a position to do that.
How
So
many acres are you talking then? If you're saying give them 60 days, that gives them a lot of time to say, hey, I'm gonna survive.
Pretty security.
Well, that's, I think, the total acreage in Stark County with, I think what's been recorded was 15,000 for, you know, all the companies that have recorded leases.
Then why are we waiting 60 days while we do it now?
Well, I think the moratorium, we don't want to stop that project because that's just gonna lead to lawsuits from, you know, and the taxpayers. that pay for it, obviously.
Yeah, but so how many acres are we talking now?
Whitley
Charlie,
County did their
what are we
moratorium.
waiting? Let me say something.
Whitley County did their moratorium, did they
Did I-
face lawsuits and
I
more
don't even know if they passed that. I don't know if they passed, that's that one he found.
Noble County, that, I misspoke earlier when I said Whitley, it was Noble County, that's what Albion is. They're the ones that, their plan administrator advised me that had passed.
Okay.
And there are 6, I have it in my phone, I listed the other counties like Cal, and there were 5 or 6 other ones that had put moratoria in at one point or another. Some of them may have let them expire, but you know, maybe they had felt that they had enough time to evaluate.
I just
Can I say something without that in the background? Charlie?
Yeah.
Okay. One of them asked how many acres in our next, our plan that we would submit, it would be about 1,000 acres inside the fence is all we're looking at with our first phase.
What about
And
us?
where is it?
Isn't it pointless to put a moratorium just to continue to let people lease after the moratorium? That's
I want to slow, it down. I don't want to completely stop any project that's being worked on now. That's the goal here, I think, but I don't want to, you know, somebody that's been on our doorstep several times, you know, but they need to get the stuff turned in. I mean, if they've come to us several times, I mean, it's time to get it in. And so we can move on with this. But so should we, I mean, I know you can't tell us directly how to do it, but I mean, what's
here's my personal opinion.
Yeah.
Just to tell you process, they're talking all substantive, I'm talking process. You tell me what you want to do. I'm just telling you, at the end of the day, the only thing that I worry about is Hoosier, because they have that reliance aspect to communication with us. Maybe it won't hold up before, but at the end of the day, I'm the one that's got to stand there in front of the, nobody else is going to be there. I'm going to be there saying, this is why the county decided to do what they did, and I've got to have a darn good reason as to why they wrote Hoosier into that. If they're going to argue reliance, a lot of this stuff is in stuff that maybe we like being very clear with everything. A lot of this discuss also discussing litigation strategy really isn't an area that we should be talking about in open meeting. Litigation, not the solar, the litigation aspect of it. So you guys tell me what you want to do. I've given you my advice.
Don, what do you think here?
I was just thinking. I was just thinking a cap, but I thought that would give us a little more. Or we could release it and not, quicker. Cause even then, Justin, will that stop it doing the cap? I mean, the ones that already started, that won't stop them from going on, right?
We have to justify the cap. So I guess that's why I thought putting an immediate pause on everything allows us time to gather the information and justify whatever cap we're putting on something. Because a cap is is the final, it's, hey, this is what the cap is. We're not budging from that number. So there has to be some, there's a lot of people here offering a lot of points of discussion that goes into that consideration, fair market value, the degradation of their value of their homes. Dave said, which is true, we need to get more people to the table that are affected, like your fertilizer companies and your seed companies are also detrimentally affected by this. But if we're gonna put a cap on something, we need to justify what that is, but a moratorium, again, is I know people saying, do a cap, but with what we've gotten, we've solicited comment from people, but if we're challenged, we need to be able to back that up. Putting an immediate pause on it, just having to gather that information as soon as maybe if it's a 12-month moratorium on something, you say, well, we would have said a 20,000 acre cap, and now that we've looked at it, we think 25,000 more appropriate. How do we know that right now, other than just through soliciting public comment? Moratorium pauses it. Right. Whether you want to work around for Hoosier, that's up to you. And then the cap is like the final. This is what the cap is, and here's all the studies that we've gathered, here's all the comments we've gathered to justify that cap. So I think people are kind of conflating the two and saying we want a cap, we want a cap. Well, that's fine. Sounds like a lot of people are in favor of that, but how do we justify that number? Yeah.
So Justin, if we paused it, if we decide to release it, is that gonna take like 3 months to release it, or can we release it?
Talking about releasing the moratorium on the back end,
Yeah,
you would just either repeal the ordinance that you passed or you pass a new one.
See,
you know what I'm saying? It just, that way, if someone does come to us and we don't have as many acres as we thought, are we gonna be able to tell them that they could do it?
Sorry,
I'm still not in favor of telling the farmers what they can do and what they can't do with their land.
Well,
That's the thing, you know what I mean? I mean, they bought the farm or they inherited whatever.
yeah, I mean,
It
you have a
could be
good,
up to them.
I mean, you have a justifiable reason to pause things right now. I think enough to pause it for X amount of time. Again, if you want to carve out, you can also discuss that. All the rest of the stuff is substantive that you have to justify. I mean, you're asking a substantive question. I guess I'm just talking more procedure.
Right.
The answer to your question is I don't know, because I'm not. We've not delved into this since we started. You guys started talking solar 2-3 years before I came.
The initial ordinance was passed before I was in office.
Yeah, I can't speak for everybody, but I know I would like to see a moratorium without a waiting period to give other companies a chance to get their bids in or whatever. I would like to just see a moratorium because there are pros and cons that are people for and against. So a moratorium until, the community gets a chance to educate themselves and, has more educated thinking.
a moratorium will be put an expiration like date, because that's what I seen on that one, like, I mean. Now, if we
I mean, you
want
could
to
always
change something,
extend it.
yeah, extend it or.
Finite date.
Yeah, so I feel like if they know that we're thinking about it, then they've already got way more aggressive with it. I feel like they'd probably get a chance to go, but.
I'd say we probably want something by the next meeting.
Okay. Okay, I'll tell you what, let me draw up a couple different versions of the moratorium. You guys can decide what you like or don't like, because there's a lot of pieces I'm gonna have to fill in. And I don't want to do that unilaterally. It's not my decision. So.
And give us. He's asking for a more language for a moratorium to be drawn up as many options, and you think we should. Sure. I mean, to cover this as frequently as possible.
Okay, I don't want to skip out for it. You guys give me your decisions. I will do that. Okay.
Thank you.
Hey, Charlie,
Yeah, Dave.
I just have one question for you, but if it is a moratorium, would it at least name Nextera, Mammoth and Hoosier that they're exempt essentially then, or how would that work?
I think that'll depend on the options Justin writes up for us.
Yeah.
All right, just curious.
Being exhausted as I can.
All right, thank you.
I'd like one more chance to plead for the residents of this county and the animals that we share the earth with for some consideration, please. Please.
Oh, yeah.
What's that?
Not tonight. No, there is one other thing we do need to take action on.
Two of them.
Yes, well, yeah.
Thanks, thank you all for coming.
Thank you for hearing us.
So I have a new agenda item. Thank you. I'm gonna do it.
So.
We know you could make.
Right. It's something you need another starting new flag. Well, you're just gonna let them speak. So then we just gotta speak.
Do you want to go or there's only one?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Can you?
July 8th?
Just do it control.
What time? You said 9?
9 o'clock it starts, but by the time we get speakers, we start closer to the theirs. And I can put those first if you want.
Oh.
I mean, I was, well, I was in a one earlier.
We're on a monthly meeting.
Yeah.
This one we get like 70 people at. We do our elections. That's gonna give him. Oh boy, we're supposed to start getting people to speak and make doing everything.
Yes.
We speak for it.
It's okay, right now, let's see.
Right. I can't write. Want to rewrite it?
Okay. Trying to put the second in that pathway. And there's people who don't want it on private property, it should be on county property, so that's where I would start.
Oh.
All right, yeah, then we have, thank you. I'm just gonna see how this finishes.
We have to approve EMS director.
Make a motion to appoint Jerry Smith as our EMS director.
Second. I'll second that.
Sorry, I muted. Go ahead.
Sorry. And I'll make a motion to appoint Stephen Hoy as the IT director.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Then we had. Yeah, oh, this was for Reese, through the insurance company.
It's what do they call it? Make a motion to approve the engagement letter with Wyland Humphrey, Clevenger and Cerisi.
For a second,
Yep, I'll second it.
all in favor?
Aye. That's just your.
Yeah. Anything else for us, Mark?
No.
Rachel? No. Anyone else have anything for us?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
See you, Doc.
Yeah.